Good morning and welcome from the UK. It's Open Minds and it's the Open Minds special. Yes, I'm producing some special shows with some very special guests. Today I have the one and only Miguel Mendonca. I've been practicing his name because I just sometimes go brain dead. However, and today we're going to talk about one of his books, We Are the Disclosure. I'm going to read a brief description from the Amazon site where it is out on Audible now. So on my auto cue, since the late 1940s, a growing number of individuals and groups have urged the authorities to public disclosure to what they know about the interaction between humans and non-human intelligences. But for 70 years, those authorities have employed various tactics to keep the subject secret and to confuse perceptions of any information that does reach the public. But as people worldwide continue to experience various contact phenomena, got that word out, the responsibility of researching and reporting this has fallen to those called in various ways to participate. This is the part that really interests me. We Are the Disclosure is an embodiment of this bottom-up disclosure process, and that's how I perceive this. Through in-depth interviews, this book provides a people's history of the development of the field since the early days. Oh, I've just lost it. Look at that. I've just lost that. See, I was doing so good there, guys. You know me and my auto cues. I'm going to let that go, Miguel, because I just lost it. So welcome to the show. This is Gloria. And thank you for coming on and sharing the backdrop of this book. But more importantly for me, I want to ask, what inspired you, this book? I mean, you've written some amazing things. What inspired you first?
It was simply the experience of working on Meet the Hybrids. In that process, like for years before that, I had been reading books on the subject and obviously absorbing a lot of information through lectures and interviews and documentaries and so forth, as you know, as well as having had sightings and those kinds of things. So I had, I think, the sense of the subject that most people have, that it's a kind of technological and political subject in many ways. But then when I worked to Meet the Hybrids, I realized that it's actually far more fundamental than that. It really is about the nature of being. I mean, it goes through, like, on the one end of the spectrum, you have the kind of masculine end, the sort of technological, political stuff. It's hardware, it's gear, it's physical traces, it's nuts and bolts. And then you start to move along the spectrum when you start to think about contact and the experiences that people have been reporting for decades in the modern era, but of course millennia in terms of what we receive from cave paintings and various art and representations of things that certainly fall in line with a heck of a lot of experiences that people report today, right? So it seems like this has always been with us. And then when you talk to experiencers, there are very few of them, none that I can think of, that have not gone on a journey that takes them away from the kind of hardware and through the kind of health and well-being into the sort of spiritual realm, to consciousness, to really fundamental existential questions about what is life, what is consciousness, and to what extent is oneness a thing, right? This idea that we are not different to them on the fundamental level.
Mhm.
We're only different to them culturally, physically. There
Yeah.
are a lot of things, there are a lot of ways. I mean, if you travel around the world,
Mhm.
you're going to see a lot of people that are very different and very alien to you, but you're still the same fundamentally. If you look at, you know, a piece of lichen on a rock, if you look at the rock, if you look at the rock it's sat on,
Mhm.
if you look at the earth it's maybe buried in,
Mhm.
if you look at the earth, if you look at the creatures of the earth,
Mhm.
we're all different in form,
Mhm.
but ultimately we are all life, we are all energy. And when you get into that realm,
Yeah.
and you look backwards, way down that spectrum to
Yeah.
people,
Mhm.
you know, fiddling around with, you know, crash material. So it's not to make any kind of judgment at all, right? Everybody is bringing their expertise. Everybody is bringing their skills.
Mhm. Mhm.
Like Stanton Friedman, who I interviewed in We Are the Disclosure, a nuclear physicist, right? So he had never had a sighting in his life. And
Mhm.
I interviewed him only maybe 3 years before he passed,
Mhm.
2 or 3 years, something like that. And it was interesting to talk to a guy like that, that was in so many ways one of the faces of classical ufology.
Yeah.
But he never had a sighting, and yet he was absolutely bonded to the
Mhm.
topic, and he brought all of his skills and experience
Yeah.
to bear,
Mhm.
and he did his piece.
Mhm.
So We Are the Disclosure is the idea that all of us, wherever we fall on that spectrum, and it may be multiple points on the spectrum,
Yeah.
we may travel up and down,
Mhm.
we may exist on all of it at once.
Mhm.
Everybody is offering their piece
Yeah.
to the general understanding.
Mhm.
So you could contrast that with the thing that people are calling for all over the place, which is top-down disclosure, official disclosure.
Yeah.
It's, you know, a press conference at the White House.
Mhm.
It's a bunch of scientists. I always picture Michio Kaku. I mean, if they're going to get anybody,
They're going to get him.
it's going to be him,
Yeah.
right? That's just this
Mm.
image that I have. And that, and what would they say, right? It gets really sticky.
Yeah.
The minute you start saying, I mean, already we are in an interesting period, because there is now this official task force being set up, the AOI MSG, to oversee the collection of all of this data through the military. I don't know if I've really not read the detail to look at whether it also includes the intelligence community.
Mhm.
But we know that's always been traditionally quite factional, a lot of infighting in departments and between departments, between agencies. The FBI and CIA seem to have been, you know, at loggerheads historically forever. So for me, it always comes back to, what would they say? What would these guys announce? Because the idea that some disclosure advocates hold, which is that this is going to usher in a new era of free energy and blah, 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 I just think that is the ultimate expression of magical thinking. To believe that, you have got to ignore everything that you know about the nature of power, of government, of business. Absolutely, all of them have entrenched interests that are all to do with territory, power, funding, and advantage, because we are tribal by nature. You know, we're built for in groups and out groups, sociologically, psychologically. So it's, to me, an absurdity, the idea that any official disclosure is ever going to give us anything more than a pitch. It's all going to be part of a game, as far as I see. I mean, absolutely everything else is. Why would this be different? That's the
I'm in
million-dollar
total
question.
agreement. It's just not going to happen. And if whatever comes out is more disinformation or just breadcrumbs, And I agree. And that's why when I read the intro, and obviously it got lost there on it, on my phone, from the bottom up. I love this. I've always said it will, as an experiencer myself, it comes from the bottom up. So just hold on there a second, because that part I think is really important. But a part you raised earlier on is experiencers are not interested in the nuts and bolts. I never was. And every experiencer I've interviewed or spoken to, and myself, it has been exactly as you've stated. It's, you started to go on this journey, this spiritual, who am I? What's going on? It doesn't fit into your reality. And, there's not many, I'd say, authors that actually go deep down on this, Miguel. So Miguel, I did it again, corrected myself. He's going to get infuriated with me. And you've done this. So I'm really interested in how you broke this down, and you evidenced in your book how it is from the bottom up and how it's going to go from your truth, or how you think it may go.
Well, there's a couple of dozen people interviewed in this book.
Mm-hmm.
So there are people, again, right across the spectrum. There are, I mean, it's so deep and so wide. It's really tough to do it justice, mm-hmm. because I don't want to make overblown statements about it, because its value is going to be individual, every person that reads it.
Absolutely.
But I, in a sense, wrote it for me. It's the book I wish I had had access to when I started researching. I wanted to know, what are all the dimensions of this thing?
Yeah.
What is this really?
Yeah.
And so after years of research, I felt like I was getting a relatively expanded sense of the subject. And I thought, and I was frustrated that I couldn't find books that really did this justice.
Yeah.
I think the best book that I'd come across was Jim Maher's book, Alien Agenda.
Mm-hmm.
He went into everything. Was an incredibly fine journalist. Mm-hmm. And he was fearless. He just went wherever he wanted to go. And I read Alien Agenda, and that was mind-blowing. But I still felt that only went so far. It didn't really get into the spiritual dimension at all.
Yeah.
And you realize that, certainly for experiences, the spiritual dimension, what it does to your consciousness is so profound.
Absolutely.
That the nuts and bolts become this much.
Yes.
And all the rest. So I felt like I wanted to rebalance the narrative in a sense. I wanted to present something, bring forward the kind of people that could do that. So there's a bunch of people in the book, like Klaus Donner, like Rita Louise, that have looked at the historical end of this, like Michael Cremo. How far does this extend into our past? And what role did it play? Which civilizations did it connect with or impact, influence? And how has that manifested? How has that come up through history into the modern day? And then there's the scientists. There's people like Stanton Friedman that have looked at the kind of the hardware side of things. Then there's people who have looked at the disclosure piece of this. So the political elements of this. Then there's people who have done the exopolitical stuff, like C.B. Scott Jones, like Alfred Lambremont Weber, like Rebecca Hardcastle Wright. Then you've got experiencers, then you've got hybrids. There's also journalists, there's the YouTubers, the people like yourself who are bringing all of this and channeling it through various media on a regular basis. And really the effort was to try to get a sense of not just what the subject is, but how do we handle it as individuals, as experiencers, as a society. And prior to COVID, I felt like we would just get on with it. You know, we would just accept that, okay, this is a thing. I had a lot more faith in people at that time, faith in people's intelligence. And COVID just detonated that for me. When I look at the death rates, when I look at, I mean, people have said to me, someone said to me, it still blows my mind. I want someone to cough in my mouth who has COVID, to give me COVID so I can prove it's just a flu and there's no such thing as COVID. It doesn't exist. As if flu is nothing. As if flu is nothing.
Yeah, I know. There are a few arseholes out there. But
it goes on and on. And if you look at the January 6th riots, you know, and everything else that's happened, and the whole of 2020, you know, what went on with the kind of racial reckoning, and it was such a slap in the face, the whole George Floyd thing. All of those guys, everybody who lost their lives in that period of time, Breonna, Arbery, it just goes on and on and on. And to be reminded in such a bleak way that people are still so controlled, so filled with anger and fear and anxiety about each other, and COVID has amplified that in the most incredible way. And people have, you know, reacted okay in the beginning, and then you had this QAnon absurdity, and people bought it. I mean, they bought it, and people that we know had been all love and light, love and light, love and light, love and light, until you want to throw up. 6 months prior,
I know that.
Suddenly, they are calling for every Democrat on the planet, half of Hollywood, to be hung, to be murdered.
I mean, that is the state of current affairs. You know, my perception on this is I'm not in that timeline. I have nothing to do with that. In my timeline, maybe it's because, maybe we can discuss this from your book, the experiences, I shifted through the experience to a different timeline where that I was in that timeline, that no longer resonates with me. And I think you need to have that polarity. I think you do, to when you start to observe, if you're looking at, well, the experiences, what's happening with them, you know, what's going on, why is there acceleration in consciousness, why are they becoming more earth loving, or blah blah blah. I'm not talking love and lighters. And then you look at the same time, there's another polarity coming up, what you've just described. I mean, I actually saw someone at the very beginning when I was out. I think they were licking buttons on a lift or something. I really don't know. I mean, they could have had, you know, I don't know, some venereal diseases or something. I have no bloody idea what, you know. But so I'm aware, but I saw it in a polarity, Miguel. So I understand, and I think history has shown, when we, you know, if you read authors from the past, that as something comes up that we deem to be horrific and, you know, terrorizing or genocide or something, at the same time, something else elevates. There's like a balance, and there's a choice between the two. And you've raised that in this book. Guys, I haven't read it yet, but I've spoken to Miguel enough to have an understanding, and I have read a bit. You've raised that in this book, that there's a polarity there. You've got the top-down disclosure and the bottom-up disclosure. You've raised it. That's what's going on in the current reality now. how from that, to move that forward, how from your perception is that going to occur whilst we got the other polarity going on, people go around doing what they're doing and wanting to hang and all the rest of it, you know, the PMQs and all that. How does your book address this? Because you do,
I mean, just to finish my previous point, my point was simply that given what we saw unfold in 2020, I think it was a kind of a pretty sharp reminder that people cannot even handle the fact that we come in different shades.
Yes, I know. How they're going to handle ET.
Different. So, and the thing is that once you let the brakes off,
yeah,
as soon as, I mean, it must be so incredibly difficult for the authorities because it's a slippery slope, right? For them just to say we're going to set up a UFO task force.
Yeah.
I imagine that there's going to be a whole back and forth in there over the people who are saying, look, let's just tell them what we know. Let's just level with them.
Yeah.
And all the other guys going, but they are crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Our entire culture is almost designed to make people crazy. The stress levels in our lives on so many levels, as if it wasn't stressful enough previously over the last 20, 30 years, adding social media and the amount of sociological, psychological pressures on us, economic pressures, as well as, you know, climate change. Just going off like a bomb all over the planet. And that's now. That's not even 5 or 10 years from now.
However, it's not as it were in 2020, going into 2021, I just looked at the human beings and thought, fuck, what you like? What happened to you? Coming into the latter part of 2021 now, that is not escalating anymore. In fact, it's decreasing. So that's just my perception. I see it slightly different. Yes, I totally agree. If they can't handle what we all went through in 2020 and all the rest of it, then how the hell they're going to handle a disclosure? I hear you. I hear you. However, it comes to a point in the polarities of the balance. I'm saying I'm not waiting for my government or any bloody government. I am the disclosure. That's it for me. I'm sorry, that's the way it is. However, and this disclosure that's coming out from me and millions of others is now, because it's calmed down from what you rightly identified as moronic human beings, just wild, with no intelligence, no discernment, no nothing. And the divide went like that, vroom, out. Everyone was divided between everybody. However, I'm pulling it back. The end of this year, I'm seeing it differently. I am seeing it. It's just my personal perception that, you know, may infuriate you slightly, but do you see what I'm saying to you? I see that differently. And that's why I think your authorship is so good, because not many authors will bring out what you've just raised. Yeah, about the behavior of humans, how they're going to take it. You've got one camp going, and I've heard them, oh, we need disclosure. And they spend their life just bitching they need disclosure. But you have the other camp that's not like that. That's changing. I think it's changing. And the likes of your book is bringing up, look at you, I'm sorry, you're morons, what you're doing. Look at yourself. This is not a way to go forward, but you're offering another way from the, you know, down up disclosure, which I think.
I guess I see it from one perspective, I see it really as a love versus fear thing.
Yeah.
And even the people that,
good analogy,
I thought were very loving, you know, have become, I have this phrase that came out of nowhere. I just think, you know, they fell in the pit. They fell in the pit and they can't get out. And that pit is deep and very, very dark. And, you know, it's the people who get sucked into the YouTube algorithm. You know, it's just this portal to hell of idiots on YouTube, filling them with misinformation and nonsense. And the problem is that if somebody's own kind of intellectual integrity is too low, they just accept it. Some people, the gates are wide open. Any old rubbish will do. Anything that somebody else says, if they feel that person is in some position of authority, or that person reflects their own anger, or that person reflects their fear or their anxiety. And people's anxieties, it's like they're a magnet. They're just looking for something to stick to.
They feed upon it. I mean, obviously, you know, you could say, like, you know, in spirituality, you have like energy vampires and things like that, or, you know, the doomer and gloomers, which I'm not one of. They say, you know, entities, and they're pulling you that way, but they feed on it. They don't use discernment. They don't use judgment. They don't even question anything someone says. But we have it even with what we call rock stars or celebrities. Yeah. These have, you know, it's been recorded, many that have passed away were the most obnoxious, absolutely evil humans ever, but they were worshipped and idolized, and their behavior was, oh, it doesn't matter, you know, they wouldn't lie to me. And you sit there and you go, what the fuck? And I did so many of those what the fuck moments. I don't say it no more. I just let it go, because but not many people are aware of this. They don't see it this way, or there's not many beings that someone comes up and says to them, can we have a discussion about this? Let's look at it this way. I won't say all of these will not awaken and look at it in a different view. Everyone's on their own journey, on their own path, and they've got a right to personal truth and autonomy. However, I totally agree with what you're saying, but I add again, I think it's shifted. I think the fear has dropped, because the main part, you look at, you know, people now, I talk to so many different people, and they know my paintings. Everyone knows there is nothing anymore. There used to be way back, you're schizophrenic, you're this, but there's, oh, you believe in them? Oh, yeah. Wow. And they go, well, I did see something. And it's just like the conversation's coming. So it's just my perception on that part of it. How do you feel about that? Do you think that it's improved since 2020?
Not really. No. Well, no, I don't. I did history in my degree. It was geography and history. And in looking at human behavior historically, it's always been the same. It's just the technology changes. So I don't buy into this idea that there is this enormous flowering of consciousness and this ascension narrative. I just don't. I think that I see in a lot of those.
If it's not in your reality to perceive, then it's not there. That's not wrong or right. It's just in my reality, I perceive it.
The difficulty I have is that I have absurd standards. I am not a human. I'm not a regular type of person. No, I feel, and this has been as honest as I can be.
Yeah.
From birth, really, I felt like I was not this. I was not. Yes. This is not my home. Yeah. I'm not one of these people. I'm in it, but I'm not of it.
Yes, yes.
And it always seemed alien. And the older I get, the stranger it gets. It doesn't get, because there's a difference between being able to understand something and being able to get it.
Yes, I agree.
And I can understand things cognitively. I can understand human nature intellectually, but I can't understand it fundamentally.
I'm with you,
because I can't ever quite embody and integrate it.
Yeah,
it never really, because there's always this voice in my head that says, yeah, but can't they choose something different? Why do they choose this?
Mm.
Why would they choose? Why on earth would anybody anywhere, like a species that decides, I know what we need, bombs aren't big enough, but there's this whole nuclear thing,
I know.
so we can make one that can literally level a city and kill tens of thousands of people with one weapon. And then someone else says, you know what? And then the people doing it, there's this idea of atoms for peace, right? They say, we're going to build this, and that's the end of all wars.
Yeah, right.
The
yeah.
end of all wars, because we've got the biggest bomb.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's going to be that.
Yeah.
How nobody put their hand up from the back of the room and said, well, what if they build a bigger one?
Mm. I mean,
Which
didn't the
exactly
guy who
what
invented
happened.
the nuclear bomb, is it Oppenheimer, said, I am, what was it, his statement?
I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
That's it, the destroyer of worlds. I mean, that for me, when I saw that clip way back, that really got me. How far the human being will go for power, materialistic, and all of that. That did get me. I know we've digressed slightly off the book, guys, but it's just so interesting. So you get the whole deal today. However, the reason we've gone down that road is, if correct me if I'm wrong, and you will, is the fact that about disclosure, what you witnessed in 2020 and the basic idiocy of many, but not everyone, how would they handle disclosure? And then I made the statement, well, you can stagnate and just, your life would just be, I want disclosure, without any discernment or research. One thing many do not do, I do not speak on a topic that I haven't either researched or experience, so an experiential knowing. And many in the area of disclosure talk jack shit. There's nothing behind it. You don't need a PhD. I'm not talking that. Hardcore researchers that speak to, like yourself, experiences. Now, you've just gave your statement. Your perception is different to mine, and I'm an experiencer. That's fine. And that's good, because we need that polarity to have this bloody conversation. We need that for the book, We Are the Disclosure, to be written, because it needs to happen. It's still a polarity. So I have no disagreement, and I love your personality. I do. I love it when you're on one. I really do. I just keeps me grounded. So I don't go off like the love and lights. No, seriously, you bring a perception, and your books do that. Like Meet the Hybrid, you bring something. Now, you spoke about you, but still from you, this being that is, that I always infuriate, you produce such art. I mean, come on. So what's going on there? This book, now, We Are the Disclosure, you produce that. So something tells me it's the same with the polarity out of you. I don't get it. Even though you don't get it, you are producing amazing artwork in the form of a book. That's how I perceive you. We have digressed, I know, but it's good.
Well, I mean, that book, as I say, was an attempt to bring the subject up to date. And I'm not sure it's out of date yet, given that it is a historical overview. I mean, there's people in that book that remember Kenneth Arnold's sighting.
Wow. I don't think I'm that old, am I?
Yeah, I mean, 4 of the people in the book have already passed.
Bless.
4 of them. Rosemary Ellen Guiley, who wrote the foreword, Jim Mars, Stanton Friedman, and Clifford Stone. And there's another handful of people that are in their, 70s and 80s, and maybe even, pushing 90. So I feel like with the passing of time, that book is going to become more important
Yeah.
as a record of that period of time from the birth of the modern phenomena.
Yeah.
I mean, there's
just
a bunch
like
of
we
people in there
research,
who are ex-military.
yeah, just like we researchers now, whatever field we're in, we go to research authors historical or interviews historical, so we can get the sort of the backdrop coming up to our current times. So I mean, obviously, I loved Clifford Stone and Jim Mars, and that he was around when I was really becoming aware of what was going on with me, and he was just like a bulldog.
They're amazing interviews, and they were such gentlemen.
Yes.
I mean, that was the thing that
they were gentlemen.
They were like a different
generation,
almost a different generation when you still had actual gentlemen.
Yes,
and people would not just
open the door. I mean, come on, love. If we meet up for a coffee, you can open the door for me up the road. No, you know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe you will, but we're saying they were gentlemen, and that come across. And they were sympathetic, empathic, and aware of other people's sensitivities when they were sharing something which in their time was like, you know, it was a nuclear bomb explosion. They were coming out and fearlessly coming out. And you know, these they're like the gods of, for me, they're the gods of ufology, if you're going to call it. Some people say other bit, and I say no, because if you listen to their interviews or their discussions, is they give it all in context. It was all inclusive. Does that make sense to you? As another would.
I mean, I think that they followed their curiosity as everybody in the book does. I mean, there are so many mind-blowing chapters in there. I mean, Lynn Buchanan's is incredible, The Remote Viewer. Clifford Stone's is, I mean, they give you chills, honestly. They are sharing things with a level of courage that is daunting. You know, but they are all people of absolute conviction. And then you have people like Barbara Lamb, Mary Rodwell, who have set the standards for the therapeutic approaches to this, because they talked about, I think it was Mary who was talking about Bud Hopkins and other people that shall remain nameless, who have done regression work. But Mary made the point that these people are not therapists. Like, she was a nurse. She was you know, a RGN.
I had her on my show, Open Minds, last year. I had her on the show.
So she's the real deal. Same with Mary. Same with Barbara. These are therapists. They're not just people who learned hypnosis. Because that's like a bull in a china shop, and you can't do that with something that is this fundamental and powerful and dangerous if it's handled wrong.
I definitely agree.
Because some of these people have no clue that they're an experiencer. Right? They have no idea. I mean, there was Mary in the book, she gives this incredible story of a young lad, I think it was a friend of her son's, maybe, if memory serves, and in Australia where she lives, and she regressed him, and he wanted to know what caused a motorbike accident that he'd had. And all he remembers is he's driving along, you know, dirt road, and the next thing he's lying in the gravel, but he had no clue what happened. And I think he had to go to hospital and broke a broken arm or something like that. And Mary said, sure. And as she's asking him, okay, so what's happening? He said, well, I'm just going down the road, and oh, and there's something in the sky. And I guess she gets that feeling of, oh my God,
another one.
It comes. And she said, and what is it? And he said, well, it's like a disc or whatever it was. And the next thing is, you know, he's basically whoop, and he's on the craft, and he said, and she's, you know, you don't lead, you just ask questions. You ask questions. What are you seeing? What's happening now? Look around you. What are you perceiving? What are you feeling? What's the temperature like? Blah, blah, blah. And he said, oh, I'm looking down and I can see a pair of clown shoes. And she said, okay, do something for me. Take another look. And he said, oh, and she said, what? And he said, they're not clown shoes. And she said, okay, what are they? What are you seeing? He said, they're feet. And basically he looks up and there's I think it's a classic gray.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so this dude had no idea, none at all.
Yes.
So, you know, to me, to do any kind of work with experiences, you've got to know what you're doing.
Yes, you do.
You know, you can't just be a nice person, because human psychology, as I think we've been discussing this whole time, is a pretty fragile thing.
Yeah.
And we've all got to be, you know, held responsibly and carefully. Some, you know, people, so just as Mary wouldn't go and tell Stanton Friedman, you know, elbow him out the way and like, I'm going to investigate this piece of wreckage. I'm going to tell you how this propulsion system works. No, that was my point. Everybody in this experience, this field, whatever you want to call it, brings their thing to the table.
Absolutely.
Some people are delusional and it doesn't help. Some people are just all up in their ego and all they want is eyeballs and ears, and they just want to blurt their message. That's their deal. But there are, I think, if all of us can simply share in an honest way what we experience. I mean, it's a big deal for me to step out of the author role and say to whoever sees this anywhere, anytime, ever, I mean, it's up there forever. I don't feel I am human. I don't feel I'm truly part of this. I feel like some people talk about endless incarnations here. I feel like this is my first time. And there's a load of stuff that's happened in my life that's come from other people and myself that all layer up this sense of being from elsewhere.
I mean, I'm not walking in your shoes, so I wouldn't even, you know, dare to answer it, but there is a common thread here. The experience that I've spoken to and myself is I never belonged. I interviewed Tarek BB Bliss last night, and the same thing. I didn't belong. I don't belong. And that seems to, you know, I don't know what that is. I don't belong thread, but it's there. So it's very common, Miguel. And it's something I still feel to this day. I am either the alien or they're the alien. And we're starting to talk about it. So it won't be an abnormal experience that the cognitive mind's trying to go, oh my God, what's going on, and cause the stress. And it's becoming the norm, because it is the norm. That's what it seems. I mean, but you coming on, you know, this show and expressing yourself like that, I don't belong here. There's many, I will say it's coming out the closet for multiple reasons. And it was Mary Rodwell, when she came onto my show. I'd talked to many others about my ET experience, but I'd never publicly really come out. And I'm chatting to her and she's going on, and then boom, I come out the closet live. And the show was live then, live. And I said, this happened. And she said, that's my lab and this is that. And look at this and look at, and I'm going, whoa. And my whole reality shifted because of this wonderful, wonderful woman. So I must have felt comfortable coming out of my closet and saying, hello, I'm an ET experiencer. So it's a good discussion to have. We're not really digressing because we want to talk about the completion of what this book is about. It's not, as you stated, not just nuts and bolts. So, and also we're highlighting, are we not, the people involved in this field, whether authors, experiencers, the Mary Rodwells, or, Jim Mars, we're all coming from our own personal perception, perspective, and truth. And we're coming from that. So yes, we mustn't be too judgmental of others, but however, we're not going to resonate with everybody, are we? But we still need, well, I call them the arseholes because I just do that, or negative Nellies. We need that there to make us go in more and maybe use a bit more discernment. If many have said to me, you're schizophrenic, that didn't happen. And I do say, I really don't give a flying fuck what you think. It's not your experience, it's mine. I wouldn't dare comment on your experience of swimming in the channel. How could I? I didn't do it. So I just come back with sarcastic, that's just my personality.
Well, again, I think that's the anxiety in them. But I've spoken to incredibly intelligent people, some of the brightest people I've ever met about this, and they hold it at arm's length as best they can. They don't want to go there. I mean, somebody said to me, well, and unless they can prove how they get here, why would I believe that they can get here? But they're here. I mean, it's kind of moot.
A bit late for proving, isn't it? They're here.
I mean, it's sort of not the point. And,
no.
To me, we go through so many different interpretations of stages or whatever. We have different stopping points along the way, and we think it's about different things. And, people will say, well, it's really all about, what is the nature of being itself? Or it's all about me. It's about myself, my journey, my nature. And because of my feeling, my sense of self, and my permanent sense of being a stranger in a strange land.
There's a good title for you.
I think it's taken. Both in I think book and a song by Iron Maiden.
Oh, well, look at you.
On the Somewhere in Time album, 1985, my first Iron Maiden album.
I didn't know that, so there you go.
Yeah, no, it's awesome album. My God, the first time I heard it, it sounded to my ears like someone throwing a kitchen down the stairs. I just never heard a heavy metal drummer before. But it's like a lot of things. It's like if somebody talks about,
sorry, Miguel, I didn't like that band, Iron Maiden. I'm sorry, it was worse. It was grinding kitchens down the stairs on metal, and so I just had to throw that in. That was not my type of music. No.
So that's my point, that nothing works for everybody. I mean, there are those people, I forget the name of them, who regularly find themselves in hospital and all the rest of it because, I think it's a sort of Californian cult type thing. I forget, they're called the something Aryans, and they believe that you don't need food, that you can exist on prana, on liquid light, and that's all you need.
Wow.
And these people wind up in hospital at death's door on a regular basis because it turns out you do need food.
Well, it's their personal choice. However, if that does come about, can I have some? Because I might lose some weight. But it's, I mean, that's all. The only benefit for me, because I'm always hungry, the amount of energy I burn off of everything, and just go bigger and bigger. No, but that's, I look at, well, I mean, there's many. I mean, this sort of how we perceive the human experience, and that's what we're talking about, and the human experience with the connection with these beings, okay? The experiences, a human being that is been told it is this, that, the other, is now experiencing these beings. And it's, in the past, it was never taken seriously. I do remember decades ago linking into these ufology groups, and when I would talk, well, tell me what the craft looked like. What was it? What was it made of?
Mm-hmm.
And I was going, I'm so not, it's not about that. Do you fucking realize that this being went through my wall? Where's the physics? I was going on that side of it. What does it say about me? So I did experience that. So I'm fully aware. And I totally pulled away and went another way on a spiritual path because of the experience, obviously. And this is what I keep pulling back to your book. Your book is offering the polarity, the black and the white. You're offering, there's another way to perceive something. Okay.
But again, it does all kind of loop back over and over again to this press conference, this idea of what disclosure would look like. Oh. And you know, I wrote an article about this recently. I think it's called The Levels of Ufo Disclosure. I mean, you can link to it, you know, somewhere for viewers.
Send me the link afterwards.
Yeah, it's on the Watkins website, Watkins bookstore. This, you know, much storied bookstore. It's basically, you know, the mind, body and spirit capital of British bookstores. Is over 100 years old. I mean, you know, it's just awesome to be hooked up with them now and sell my books through them. But thinking about this disclosure question, just beginning with, okay, they're not from here. Mm-hmm. We know this. We know they're not Russian.
Yes.
They're not German. They're not Chinese.
No, they're not.
I mean, these nations barely existed when, you know, if you look at art in paintings on cave walls, there's no such thing as China and Germany. There's these nation states.
No.
You know, I mean, people like to throw in, you know, time travel and whatnot to the mix, and I don't know. No. I don't know. I'm, you know, of course I have no way of knowing, but
they're
you
not
know, if we
don't
set
follow
that
the
aside,
Newtonian laws of physics, they're not from this dimension.
Right. So imagining that they even go that far, that the task force maybe reports in 12 months. Mm-hmm. They take a year to basically pile up all the data, and they get a team of analysts to start combing through it. Mm-hmm. And then they begin to formulate some bullet points, and they say they're not human. Mm-hmm. We didn't make them. Mm-hmm. It's such a slippery slope, because the minute you get out there and you say that, you can't not answer the next question, because people will freak out. What do you mean out from here? What does that mean? How scared should we be? Because that seems to be the message, or the question to inspired by every government statement. How scared do we need to be by this threat, that threat, the other threat? Endless existential threats of our making, mm-hmm. and many not of our making, natural disasters and so forth. Mm-hmm. Right? So what's the next question? They're not from here. Where are they from? And they say, well, we do have bodies. I mean, say, you know, they had a gun to their head and they had to answer the question. They had to answer the question. Yeah. There's no prevarication. There's no swerving it. No, imagine they've got to answer the question. Okay, well, we've actually had craft crash and visit from 812 different civilizations. Say they had to tell the truth, and the number was just beyond anything anyone knew, because the information's so compartmentalized. Mm-hmm. People, as I said, you know, they're very territorial. They like to protect what they have, because that knowledge is power.
If this was going on and someone had a gun to their head and they were saying it, and many presidents and prime ministers would be freaking out because they wouldn't even know.
Right. So but again, imagining that the knowledge does exist, that
Yeah.
it's all been pulled by this task
Yeah,
force,
okay.
by this group, the MSG, let's call it. Then the next question is, okay, we know how they got here, where they came from, why are they coming here? And then they say, again, gun to their head, okay, well, we've got a list of reasons. Some of them are coming out of desperation. They absolutely needed zinc or something to save the civilization, whatever it might be. Some needed water, some needed biological material from humans because they are scientists and that's what they do. They go and collect, you know, they just study all of it, like the way we study the natural world. That's what they do. Some are here, and this is the biggie, some are here because their world is gone and they can't survive here on the planet, so they are creating hybrids and they're breeding successive generations until they're breeding their genetics into us, and they can walk among us even though they know there's something different. I don't think anyone's explained to them the level of headfuck of being a human. Why they would want that is beyond me.
Hold it, pump the brakes there, just stop a second, because I don't want to jump past this. I totally understand. As soon as you said that, I mean, it would be a head fuck. Yeah, you can get that. However, Miguel, look what happened with Christianity. Look what happened. The, in brackets, you know, the virgin birth and the miracles and and at the time, there were a few people saying, now on your bike, no. But look how that went. So I've got to come in. I've got to play devil's advocate. I'm interviewing you, Well, I'm not. I'm just having a conversation with him. And say, well, there has been a thing in the past that we're aware of, is this Jesus guy. Look what happened then.
Right. I mean, they are saying he's a hybrid, right? The word is not in the Bible. But if he is part human and part something else, then he is a God-human hybrid. But Jesus was a hybrid.
Yeah, so that's how I look at it. No difference. But it also, you've got to remember, when the books were written, it was like way after the event. However, and it was by the perception. Like when you write a book, you'll write it from your truth, and another author will come in, say it's me, but it's not me. And I'll write it from a totally different interpretation, or we'll change a word. But for me, this story of this man, Jesus, with this woman, Mary, that's a hybrid. And I know it because of my experience now. So if this man's got a gun on his head and he's telling the people, I don't really think it would be too much of a shock. Yes, I mean, look what happened in 2020. There's going to be a few. But if you can take the concept of Jesus, I don't see why you can't take the concept. And maybe the likes of your book are paving the way for the disclosure that's coming bottom up to happen. It's bringing it into the collective consciousness, the possibility. There you go.
Well, but again, it's all comes down to how are people really going to respond? And again, there is a slippery slope. The questions beget more questions, And I mean, going from there, we know why they're coming here, and we can't do anything about it. Some of them are polite and they say, look, we'd like permission. Most don't, as far as we know. But then there's the narrative of it's a soul agreement, it's a soul contract. You agreed before you incarnated as a human to give them your DNA because they incarnate as a human being so that the others that are not incarnating as human beings, that are incarnating as them, can give their DNA to you so that you are essentially the fifth column. I mean, I may have heard it all in those years in terms of talking to God knows how many people from many, many different, aspects and elements of this field. And so there's 1,000 narratives. And even if, no matter what the government says, people don't trust them.
No.
They just don't. I mean, even if, someone as affable as Michio Kaku delivers all of this, suddenly his integrity will be called into question.
Just the scientists now. No one is, I mean, it's obvious the past year, no one trusts the science no more. I think, I mean, let's go back to the gun on the head. What are the people going to do? I'll ask you the question, because I'm the interviewer, aren't I? I'll ask you, what do you think the people are going to do? We've got the imaginary scenario you set up, the one in the know, which is not any president or any prime minister or government, but the head of the one in the know has got a gun on his head, and obviously they just don't want to die, do they? And he's turned around and said, yes, all the things you said. From your truth, what do you think? How can you imagine? How do you think humanity is going to respond to this?
Well, this whole conversation has been about the ways in which people will respond,
but in a nutshell,
what is a nutshell? That was the nutshell. It's going to vary.
Terrible. Are there going to be riots?
If you want more than a nutshell, then I will tell you that you are going to get people who are going to go, well, for a start, that's nonsense, and that's just bullshit. We know that all of that's a lie.
Yeah.
But that one thing they said, that I agree with. And then you ask 25 people, and they're all going to pick apart different things that they agree with, disagree with.
They're going to become experts all of a sudden, all over YouTube and podcasts.
Well, the thing is that it's very hard to be a human and come at, existential threats in a reasonable and rational way. I mean, the scientists that I interview will commonly tell me that most science is biased, that people are territorial, that there are institutional incentives that basically corral people into a very narrow way of thinking. Right? So even science is not scientific.
No.
For a larger number of scientists, they're not true to the ethics of science. But then if you think of government, people in government are not true to the supposed ethics of government, that you're there to serve. You work for the people. Business, it's the same. I know. Law enforcement, it's the same. Law enforcement, how many people do they murder every year?
Yes.
I mean, this is an incredibly fucked up planet.
It is
so
more.
So I'll just keep going. I'll just keep going.
Keep going. Expand on my question.
So into that mix, this hotbed of bigotry, ignorance, and madness, of greed, selfishness, narcissism, egotism,
and all the rest,
of distrust, of all of this. This is not a particularly, this is not fertile ground in which to sow these seeds, to take, a biblical reference. It's going to be, and I think that the people that have held this information for decades, I think all of them have been very aware of this. I do. I mean, would you or I really want the job, really want the responsibility of being the people that are going to decide what is disclosed? Well,
the only truthful way I can answer that is, I do it all the time on my podcast. Whoever's listening, I don't know who listens. I disclose it to them. If I was head of a country, I don't know. I mean, I can't really, I'm not in that experience. I can't answer. I'd like to think I would, because I do have something I'm going to come up with in a minute, because I have my viewpoint of how the people would behave. And that's the whole point of a very rich, fertile discussion we're having. But I do it all the time. You do it in your books. I mean, the worst skeptics in the world could pick up your book and like the picture and get attracted to it and start reading it. You've just told them. I don't think no one goes, let's burn Miguel, let's burn Miguel's book, or let's, send hate mail to. So if you're, it's like a social experiment. When I was in my career, I used to do a lot of social experiments, not nasty ones, thank you, and see how reaction would go. Well, I'm coming back at you because it's my job to do that. And I'm going to say, well, I'm doing it on the podcast, as millions of others are, you and millions of authors like yourself, and I don't see any reaction. Someone will say, oh, have you read this book? And we'll go, yeah, it's a load of bollocks. That's what they do. There isn't, I don't perceive it. And with the social experiments of how you can, if you reveal something or do something, how the response would be, I think is a good backdrop for me, my truth. It may not for you, but I don't think it's going to be the way that you think it is. So, but that's just me. Just me. Only because I've done social experiments.
I mean, I had some involvement in public policy and working with policymakers and lobbying, campaigning, all of that. And I got some, it offered a window into decision making at the nation state level. And for sure, it's not easy because you've got people, what it essentially seemed to boil down to is you've got people who are interested in money, in business. How is this thing going to affect the existing order? So this was renewable energy that I was campaigning on. I mean, we went to see a Tory MP.
Name calling, no names.
I don't even remember. If I heard the name, I'd go, that was the guy, but I can't remember. And we were in his office talking about renewable energy, and I just published my book, and myself and an academic, an energy expert, an energy policy expert that we were working with closely. He and I went to basically lobby this MP and try and get him on side because he was part of an energy committee, I think. And he had this enormous photo on his wall stretched out as a canvas, and it was about this tall, and it was, I don't know how long. I mean, in my memory, it was like 12 feet long, so long that it took me most of the meeting to work out what I was seeing. And we were about 3/4 of the way into the meeting at the point at which we were getting real pushback from him. I mean, almost physically, he didn't want to accept the book. And around this time, it finally clicked. It was like when you look at a magic eye picture and suddenly your brain, it all pops into focus and you get what it is. It was like that. And I realized it was oil rigs in the North Sea. So that was him literally sticking it on the wall. This is what I represent. This is what I'm bonded to. This is how I identify. This is what I support. Right. So you've got those guys, and then you've got people who genuinely serve people and serve something bigger than us now. It is about us now, but it's also about our children, the future. It's about people distant from us in space and time, if not genetically. We may be related to them, we may not be, maybe complete strangers from other nations, cultures, religions, whatever. But we are able to extend to them care and love and consideration in our conversations, in our policies, in our decision making, right? So the fact that you've got these very different ways of thinking, ways of looking at the world, right? And into that, you're putting the biggest news in the entire history of the species. And that is something that every policymaker has got to weigh incredibly carefully. every decision.
I agree. Then this is where I'm stepping in. I agree. You've beautifully expressed the polarities of, like, you know, the materialistic, and we'll call the other one the humanitarian, and that they're going to release news of something in between. Okay, but there is another aspect that needs to be brought in for consideration. As an experiencer, you've given the true nature of this politician, and you've given the true nature of the humanitarians. I'm going to bring in the true nature of the beings that are here. Now that is going to, you know, you can't just look at it between, you know, the fors and against them two. You can't, because if you're saying, is this going to be good for us? Well, what is the true essence of these dimensional beings? What is it? So that will come in, and that can sway. I'm not finished yet, I know. That could sway even the materialistic, more like they're going to commit suicide, but never mind. But also the humanitarians, it's not actually as they thought it was. And what I'm bringing that into this discussion is, for my own, not just my own personal experience, I've spoken now to so many, in so many conversations with other experiencers. What happens when you have this contact? You may have a shock at first, but eventually when they're around or with you, there's this immense, powerful love energy. It's not love as in human. It's just so all-encompassing that everything breaks down, healing occurs, everything. Now, that's my truth and many other truths. I'm not aware of any demonic ones, but I'm sure they're in the equation somewhere for someone else to experience. But I'm talking generally. So you can have these materialistic, narcissistic, egotistic, head up their own arse, I don't give a fuck about the world or anybody but me. And you can have the complete opposite, as you should have, what we call the humanitarians. We'll just give them a label. And how they're going to react? Well, when they actually witness and experience these beings, as millions of Homo sapiens have already, or billions, I should say, we cannot, from our cognitive mindset, say this is going to happen. Until you experience it, then the individual will make the decision then. Does that make sense to you, what I've tried to bring into the table here? It's just part of an equation.
Yeah, I mean, experience is everything.
Yeah.
You know, that is what it comes down to. But as you say, not everybody experiences the same thing. I mean, if it was all the same, if it was absolutely universal. But
you've just said it's coming. They've admitted it. And what the next thing is, they're coming. But even experiencers will tell you they are coming. You will see them. It's going to happen. It's part of whatever's going on. I don't know. But everyone will experience this. Every human being will experience this. Experiencers say it all the time. Every one of them. So it's going to happen. I'm saying, if I come round your house for a coffee, and I come round with Faye, and we come in your front room, and you know that we're just crazy people, and you're going to feel our energy. You're reading us, yeah? And you go, oh, shit, no, not Gloria. She's going to infuriate me. But apart from that, but then you've invited a few other people, and they brought their partners along, and they come in that room, and they are like the most low vibrational, egotistic, narcissistic little shits. Vroom, you're going to feel that energy. You feel it. You know it. This is how I use my analogies. And you're going to say, you can just get out. I don't want you in my space. There, these beings that the experiencers are sharing on podcasts, in documentaries, in books, it's love. It's love. So imagine, and they've even melted the hearts of the most cynical. And I say that from personal experience, because I was a right cynical, whatever, angry person at some point. It can change. So that's that. I'm coming in with a different perception that we need to look at how people could respond from this disclosure, yes, but we must never forget to bring in what I call the middleman, which is the beings that are doing it. Their energy, when you're in it, is like, boom.
Well, sure, but try and imagine, again, the person with a gun to their head has to also, if we're talking about total disclosure, this is the scenario we're discussing, total, everything on the table, every scrap of what they have. Well, I mean, it would take, 6 months of constant lectures to dish it all out. But if part of this is saying, well, look, there is a spectrum, right? There are beings that are benign in the middle, they are not changing much, they're observing, they're not doing a great deal, and I've experienced something totally benign. And then you've got the beings that just fill you with love, overwhelm you with love. It's something that it's tough to put words to, and I've experienced that. And then you've got the negative. You've got pure malice. You've got beings that they're basically the ISIS of the ET community. And I've experienced a bit of that.
But you've got that in humans.
I'll just keep going. And I'll just keep going. And so if this is the thing that you are, this person has got to present, what do you do at that point? I mean, I've watched politicians wrestle with climate change all this time. The level of denial is crazy. Knowing it's the end of our way of life. It can't survive because our way of life is built on a stable climate. I mean, even what COVID has done, what the semiconductor shortage has done in a very short space of time, as well as Brexit, what that's done to supply chains, what that's done to prices. It's just bananas how quickly those chains get pulled apart. And climate change pulls apart all of that stuff. So most of us, you and I, couldn't survive in the wild. We're not trained for it. We buy things. We're trained to survive in an economy, not in an ecology.
Hold on, I was in the Girl Guides. Now, I totally understand what you're saying. However, none of that at the time, 2 points to that, to what you've just raised. The person with the gun in his head is going to reveal it. If he is a human being that's been chosen to do this, he won't need a gun on his head if he's had an experience, one. But even if he has had a gun on, he's got a gun on his head and he has never experienced it, the people, will not worry about climate change and that at the moment. That's not even going to come into the spectrum. Everything will shift just with dimensional beings coming in, and they have physically been seen as well, being seen, or the hybrids. We've got the likes of Ingo Swann, God bless his soul. The hybrids that walk amongst us. I'm aware of them from a decade ago. They're here. So we're trying to understand, possibly, it's like a social experiment, what would happen. And we're trying to, which is fantastic. We're bringing in all the components of climate change, of this, of that. But I think when this happens, and it's on a trajectory to happen, I don't think any of that will come into play at the time. So how would humanity respond to this disclosure? I don't think anyone really, really knows or could say. I don't think anyone has a right to say, because we can't tell another how they're supposed to react to a certain situation. If I got my orange and I cut it in half and give it to you and you're eating it, and I say, God, this is a fantastic orange, and you say, no, it's not, I hate oranges, it's nasty, it's this, And I said, I can't tell you, no, you're wrong. So this is what I'm saying. If we look at this as a social experiment, we really don't know. But what we do know, there are three major components. There's, the humanity, and the narcissists, or whatever you want to call them, the controllers. And then there's the beings. There's three components to this. There isn't, people think disclosures between the people and the government. No, it's not. Experiencers will tell you it's a three-way. It's a three-way thing. And it won't just be the government having a voice or the humanitarians having a voice. It will be the beings having a voice as well. So I don't personally think, I could be wrong, and more likely am, and my truth will change and I'll eat humble pie. But at the moment, with my experiences, it's a three-way conversation, a three-way social experiment that's just about to happen. How does that resonate with you?
Well, I mean, we're talking about this hypothetical process, and how people, what might be said, and what are the conditions that dictate what might be said. So far, the conditions have dictated that nothing has been said, that the subject has been ridiculed, denied endlessly since 47. If we just make that our starting point with Kenneth Arnold Roswell. Up till now, we've had nothing but denial, really, even though when it happened, the first press release said, flying saucer basically captured at Roswell. I forget the exact words, flying disc, whatever it was. And then, of course, that was quickly walked back. But that was the first disclosure. And the world's media jumped on it. What's this flying disc all about? Right. And since then, we've had decades and decades of experiences of other crash craft, of people, whistleblowers, being unable to keep this to themselves. And of course, when you have all of this information out there, even if everybody's honest and says it exactly as they experienced it, that's still being processed through their consciousness. Right. So even then, how do we decide what's factual in that? All we can say is that's what they said. What do we have to back it up? Right. There's a whole investigative process that people go through to try and get to some sense of the reality of the situation. But we're talking about decades and hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of participants in this. We have to say millions over that period of time that have seen things, experienced things. And you put it all together, and for the government to get up there, the authorities to take a position, it's a political decision, right? So again, that's what we have to bear in mind. It's political. It's not about what is the truth of this. Most people these days, I don't think, are naive enough to think that the government tells the truth about anything.
I mean, if they do think they tell you, I mean, all right, hold it on that one. I mean, if, tomorrow someone stands up that won't be part of the government, because with a gun to the head and says all that you've just stated, someone like me as an experiencer will say, too little, too late. It didn't bother me. I wouldn't just I don't have a TV, but if I did, I'd turn it off. I wouldn't go, oh my God, did you? No, just because I know it's true.
I do think you'd watch it. I do think all of us would
at the beginning
watch the
I would,
press conference, and because all of us, I think, at some point have wondered which way will they jump with this. I mean, the report that we got recently from the government just said they looked at, what was it, 114 or 104 reports, and only one of them was explainable. And they said we can't rule out ET. Right, so
look what they gave, the videos they gave. I mean, if you go on Mary Rodwell's site, on her page. I mean, there were billions of people around the world, especially in Mexico, for some unknown reason. They've got better footage than the Pentagon released for this. they've got, you know, better footage. And what they, when I looked at them, all right, I don't know, but when I looked at what they released, it didn't resonate with me. It just so didn't resonate. When I can go on a YouTube, or Mary Rodwell puts out, or someone else will say this was captured, or, you know, some other of the guys that do this, and I go, and as I'm looking, I'm feeling it. You know it. You know it. You know. So I think the reason that this is disinformation, that so-called disclosure, was just adding to the disinformation, adding and adding.
I mean, that's, again, as you stated, that's just your opinion.
My
That's
opinion
just the way you vibe with it or don't. I mean, I went to a crop circle a few years back, and I was fascinated with all the different takes that people had on the crop circle and what made it.
Yeah.
And it was everything from, oh, it's just some blokes with a plank, to ET, to somebody sat on that hillside and created it with their consciousness. I mean, I wish I'd had my field recorder. And then it turned out, I mean, you had people in there who would look you in the eye absolutely earnestly and say, I've been to a lot of crop circles. This is absolutely genuine. This is absolutely genuine.
That's fine for them.
Here, right? Right. Okay. So then it turns out that it was basically made, it was the logo of a bong company from California. And other people would say, oh, that bit was just added. So people believe what they want to believe. I think that is something that we have learned.
But I do hear you, and that's a real good, valid point. And we're never going to find the answer to this discussion, but we're just discussing it, as you should. But, you know, where I come from, I cannot comment or give an opinion unless I've experienced it myself. I can listen to another, and it may resonate and fascinate me, but if I haven't experienced it, or I haven't, then I can't comment on it. But I certainly cannot say, Miguel, it's not true. So let's go to crop circles. I remember being fascinated because years ago I was following earthquakes, and I was following a Mother Earth, the earthquakes, and, you know, I knew something was going on Mother Earth. So I was watching the frequencies and whatever, and then all the crop circles were coming, and I was really fascinated. And I kept thinking, wouldn't it be wonderful? And I'm so open-minded, you know. And then they did that story, because I am old enough, of the man with the planks. And I said, you bastard, you spoiled my dream. But then I realized, no, when I did do a bit of research, you know, I don't know how they're made. I don't know who makes them. I know there were man-made ones as well, but some of them are a phenomena, and I said the word, unexplainable. I am not going to be ignorant to say it's the fairies or thought, or because I don't know, it's not my truth, but I am open enough. I mean, I'm an artist, so I've painted sacred geometry and everything. Some of them are so symbolic. There's a vibration in it that I have no idea who did it, but it certainly wasn't a bloody human being. I know that, because they don't hold them. They don't have the capacity to hold that vibration, to create that. So, you know,
well, again, I don't know.
That's my personal opinion.
That's I don't know. I went to a few, and in fact, the first one I ever went to, with Barbara. She had been, Barbara Lamb, who I co-wrote Meet the Hybrids with. She had been coming to England, to the heartland of crop circles, for decades, 20 odd years, pushing 30 years. And 2015, when we were working on Meet the Hybrids, she came over that summer. So I walked into my very first crop circle ever with Barbara, and she had a little crystal and was, you know, divining, you know, whether or not it was telling her this was ET or not, this was human or not, kind of thing. And whatever they are, whoever made them, they're magical, because the not knowing does something to your consciousness. Whatever you experience, if it's something out of the ordinary, especially if it's something that the authorities, mainstream science, whatever says doesn't exist, can't exist. There's no such thing as psychic ability.
Yeah.
You know, consciousness is just an epiphenomena of late brain development, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Everything they try and
dumb down,
suppress in us, if we taste it,
yeah,
if we go there, if we live it,
if we experience
then essentially we could say, well, they just lost more authority and they lost more trust. But again, I come back to, it's boring. I don't think people want to talk about it. It's not sexy, but the business of making public policy bears an enormous amount of responsibility, and it's generally a dogfight between competing interests.
It's always
if you,
like that.
as we've been saying, the whole point of this, if you set aside all of that and you say, I tell you, or this audience, this is what I experienced, that is disclosure. And to me, it's the most real, honest, genuine version. Because, you know, the fact is, if you, to be slightly maybe reductionist, I don't know, but if you even analyze that in terms of, I'm telling you a lie, if somebody is just a liar, if they make up experiences just because, and there's a lot of reasons why people do, even the lie is telling a truth about who you are, that you're a liar. This is the thing. Absolutely nobody cannot express their nature.
No,
this is my sense of things, at least, that no matter who we are and what we do, we are always expressing our nature.
In everything that, not just in our interactions with other people, it's with the way we speak, the way we move our body, the way we create our type of work, our job, and it's unmissable. You should go people watching. Trust me, it's a brilliant social experiment. People watch. You start people, you're dead on. You start people watching. I did it back in the day. And after a while, I don't think it had anything to do with me being a medium at all, because you could get the character and everything about them just by observing them. So I like that as well. That we could go off on another discussion on that, but we're not going to do it today. We're going to pull this back. We've got into overtime. We're an hour and a half in. It has been the most fantastic. And I don't think I irritated you once, did I?
Not really. No, I think we're getting each other's measure.
We're getting it. We're getting there, because we just ignore each other. We're having an interview. Let's bring it to a close now, because we could just talk forever on this. We are the disclosure. I say I am the disclosure. In a nutshell, you wrote the book. Give me a narrative. What are you stating when you say we are disclosure?
Just that we is all of us, right? So whether it is top down or bottom up, everything everybody says, even if it's a lie, it's a disclosure about the fact that they're a liar.
Yeah.
And if it's the truth, it's still only their truth in that moment, their ability to even analyze their memories.
Yeah.
Right. So all of this is nebulous to some degree.
Yeah.
I mean, my personal takeaway from the human experience so far is we are all just making it up as we go along.
Most probably we are.
We're all just trying to figure this out as we go. For better or worse.
It's a good perspective, because then, well, I don't give a flying fudge anyway, but you literally would let go of all your stress and strain. We're just making it up. Just go, let's make up something better. Why not?
Yeah, I mean, all of us are flawed. All of us are fragile. Yeah. All of us need help from each other.
Yes.
Some people,
it's
might be super
human
sorted.
Experience. It's part of it. It's the synergies.
Well, I mean, we're primates, so we're a communal being, and to experience the visitors, them, is just, at a certain point in the process, I realized that we're all star beings. We're all part of this.
Yes,
there's no hierarchy.
No, there
all
isn't.
this bullshit about, I mean, it's one of those things that really does make my head swim when, you know, people are talking about going, you know, oh, I've transcended my ego, you know, because I'm a 17th dimensional Arcturian, and you're just a 4th dimensional Pleiadian. But when you get to level 17, what you'll discover is there's no more ego. And this nonsense really goes on. And I guarantee you've encountered it.
Miguel,
right? But
yes,
again, you know, we just have to be real, and we have to be
it's none of my
ourselves humble.
It's their journey. Let them get on with it.
We have to have some humility with regard to our experience of someone else's egotism. Everyone is just doing the best they can. Everybody is trying to figure it out as they go. And what the hybrids had told me, which was transformative in Meet the Hybrids and thereafter in We Are the Disclosure and Being with the Beings, is the beings don't know all the answers. They don't know everything. Right? They are simply, you know, other people. They're simply other beings also trying to figure it out. And all they have, right, is their truth. And there may always, I always have leave the door open for the possibility that wherever we are, our level of awareness, there's always the potential that there's something beyond it.
Absolutely.
We are simply like Russian dolls. We're simply nested
one inside the other. It's a great segue to pull out of the conversation now, and I love that analogy and the fact that, you know, bring it back to current times. I said we're getting on all right. I said, well, I didn't piss you off too much this time, did I? No, we're getting there. You know, we actually like each other, but we just, you know, it's the same with these beings. At the beginning, it's a bit, you know, me and you. You're so infuriating, Gloria. And I'm going, yeah, and I don't care. But anyway, it's the same principle. And I think this is the way we need to perceive it. That's how I perceive it now. And I've done it. You know, I stopped a certain contact a good few months ago. I said, I'm bored of it. No more. And stopped. Just stopped. And I went, fuck, I got that power. And I never even thought to stop it. Can you believe it? After decades and decades. It's not bad. I just got bored of it. I was interested in more of the angelic realms, and I'm researching the gods and, you know, a bit of mythology. I mean, and then I have different beings now that are like the Elohim, and I go, way. And I went, oh my God. But I never wanted it to stop. But just one day I said, I've had enough of that. I'm bored of it now. I've stagnated in an experience, and I knew I had to shift, and it changed. So, you know, discussions like this are so refreshing and opening. And listen, guys, before we finish this extended show, Miguel, if I can now say your name correctly, where can anyone get hold of you or purchase your book or blah, de, blah, de, blah? Sell yourself shamelessly. Go for it.
Amazon. They're all on Amazon. I think that they are available through other booksellers. I think that Barnes & Noble online and, you know, all of that, but, you know, people can find them pretty much all over the place. The website is miguelmendonca.com. People can find me on Facebook, you know, ask me sensible, silly, ridiculous questions, whatever. And I'm also I am looking for musicians for a project. Anybody who makes music who might be interested in a collaboration from, let's call it, the cosmic community. Hit me up. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me through my site. Gloria will put links in. And track me down. You know, let's talk.
Lovely. So there you go. And on that note, I'm going to say thank you for watching Open Minds. I'm back tomorrow with another guest. It seems it's daily at the moment, but hey ho, we just go with the flow. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. It's not about me, but yes, it is. But it's about sharing this information so everyone gets access. It's free. You're not paying for it. You know, it's totally free. But please share and like and subscribe if you can. Until the next time on Open Minds, it's bye from me. Bye, guys.